So I'm AJ. I'm an undergraduate student here at the University of Nevada Reno, a part of the Honors College here, and I'm joined here by Adriel Friedler and Mark Friedler. And they're a father and son, and we're going to be interviewing them today. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course.
So for the both of you, we just generally want to know so just introduce both of you.
Yeah, as you said, my name is Adriel. I'm son of Mark Friedler, which you wouldn't guess just by appearance, but um, I go to UNR. I'm serving as the Honors College Student Council President, majoring in finance, minoring in economics, and I'm originally from Walnut Creek, California.
Hey, my name's Mark Friedler. I'm Adriel's dad, and dad to him and his older brother Matthew, who is a recent Honors College graduate. And we moved to Reno about 2 years ago after Adriel decided to go to UNR. And I'm a startup guy and entrepreneur and doer of lots of things. And I'm also happy to say that I've joined the Honors College Community Advisory Board because I was so impressed with what the Honors College is doing, the value it's brought to Adriel and his brother. So I'm trying to find a way to be helpful back.
Awesome. So this question is directed towards Mark. So what about the Honors College do you find very like intuitive with joining the Community Advisory Board and having your son and I guess both of your sons graduate from our Honors College here?
Well, I like that the Honors College celebrates achievement. I mean, it's cool to stretch and go do interesting things, right? A lot of times today that, things tend to be not kind of focused on that. So I think that's really good. But I think most importantly, my experience with the Honors College is that the staff has been very supportive and has pushed the students to go try other things and to, do the difficult things. And I think that's really good. And the other thing, too, that I've experienced is I think the Honors College asks students to think about things from a different perspective and not just accept one way of thinking or one way of doing. And so I think that's very important. I mean, I grew up, I went to a little liberal arts school in New York, and there the whole motto of liberal arts is that you learn to learn. And learning is a lifelong process, right? You never stop learning. And so I think, unfortunately, it's gotten rarer today for people to question, is it really this way? Or could it be a different way? Or how can I, do something differently? So I think that kind of methodology and that intellectual curiosity is something I've seen in the Honors College, which I think is super great. And it serves the students regardless of what college they come from, right? If you're a science person or a business person or a liberal arts person, that framework is very useful.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And what I was thinking is it that people aren't taught to question what they learn, or is that with the internet, do people have trouble differentiating what's true versus what's fake?
And then this question's for Adriel. So why business finance in that realm? Does it come after your dad, or what are your future goals with that?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure my dad had a bit to play with it because he's a big business guy. But my strengths coming into college and what are still my strengths academically are math and certainly not reading and writing. So when I was deciding what major I wanted to go into, business really caught my eye. And then because I was so good at math, finance caught my eye. And it's a very interesting major. As you learn a lot about the economy, what's going on. It's also a very versatile major, so you could do a lot with it coming out of college and university. And I'm someone who it's hard for me to really settle down and stick to one thing. I like doing it. I'm very I like doing many things at once. And so I feel like with finance, I could do many different things and go into many different fields. And that's what I really enjoy about it.
And then back to Mark. So right now, the economic world is really really interesting. And for students graduating in this upcoming May from our graduating class, what would you recommend for them when it comes to what businesses or what startups look for hiring new and up and coming students when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to, like we talked about before, be intellectually curious. But, as when I ran my companies, I'd say to people, be a contributor, not a complainer. So unfortunately, there are too often where people see problems and they're like, oh, this sucks and blah, 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 and this person's such an idiot, instead of being like, hey, that's an interesting problem. Here's a solution. So I think in today's world, air quotes, looking for a job is kind of the wrong thing to do. I would approach things that if you're interested in a specific type of business or specific companies, I would do some research, understand the business, and be an entrepreneur yourself. Specifically, hey, I have an idea that can make your business better. You know what? If you did this and this, I think that'd be really cool. In fact, you know what? I've designed a program that in 60 days, I'm going to do from this to this. Can I just give that a try? So any CEO with a brain in their head will be like, oh my gosh, who is this person? Like someone knows about my company, has done research, has identified a need, and is offering to help. Of course, right? So it's a lot easier for you to have someone say yes to a project than to quote unquote give you a job. But I guarantee you, if you come up with a good idea, you scope a project that's going to add value to them and you can be successful. If at the end of 60 days you're successful, no one in their right mind is going to tell you to go away, right? So I think that's a really good thing to do. And a lot of people just think, well, I'm going to apply for a job, and that's where kind of, the entrepreneurial thinking comes into play. It's interesting, Adriel's older brother last year applied for an internship. I'm sorry, not an internship, for an end of year. What award did he have?
The Outstanding Senior Award.
Yeah. So he applied for the Outstanding Senior Award. And then they wrote back and they said, hey, sorry, you haven't been selected for an interview. And he wrote back, he said, I think you made a mistake. Here's why I should be selected for an interview. And a couple days later, like, oh, someone canceled. Yeah, we have a spot. Do you want to interview? So he came in and interviewed, and he ended up winning the award because he didn't accept what the conventional kind of way of doing things is. So I think, to your point, if you're looking for a job at Google or Facebook, it's probably not a great time considering Facebook just fired 10,000 people literally yesterday. So that's probably not great. But the other thing too is, I think as a young person coming out of school, you want to take as much risk as you can, that you feel comfortable with. And the good news about a smaller company is you're going to get the opportunity to touch a lot of different spots. In a bigger company, you can also do that, right? We have some friends from home where the son was an intern at Deloitte and then got a job and then got in this rotation program, got to see different parts of the business. So I think it really depends, what you like. And I also think cultural fit's really important. If you're someone who wants to have, a say on, how you do things, or you want to have more freedom, then big companies are harder in general to do that in. Unless they're like, hey, dude, you can be remote and, blah, blah, blah. But I think at the end of the day, regardless, big company, small company, what really matters is who are the people you're going to be working with, who's your direct supervisor, have conversations with that person, ask, what's your style, and get an understanding, right, that you all are going to get along. I mean, I've been in this situation where I changed roles at the same company, and I went to report to someone, and it was terrible. Like, I failed to do good diligence ahead of time, and it turns out she and I were like oil and water. It didn't work out. So I think that's also important, is, really sniff out the culture and make sure you feel comfortable with the people you're working with.
And then this question directed for both of you. So first with Adriel, how have you seen like the Honors College really promote that idea of like self and like resiliency through like our honors pillars, for example?
Yes, definitely with the honors section classes, you see a complete night and day difference on how professors teach. For example, for starters, the classes are a lot smaller. It takes you from, say, 200-person class to a 15-person class. And what they make sure to build all the classes around is about discussion. They really want to hear each of the students' own individual opinions on the subjects, rather than what you said, where they just teach and there's only one perspective on say, history or economics. So it's very well-rounded in that sort of thing. And they also like to challenge you with difficult questions that really make you think about what you're learning, rather than just busy work, which it seems like a lot of professors seem to do now. And it's very organic in the way they teach. Along with that, they have the co-curricular experiences, which really pushes you to go out and reach for those leadership experiences and take that extra initiative to get an internship. And, what you'd usually be trying to do in college, now you get credit for it, thanks to the Honors College. And, that's what I really enjoy. And even with research, Wolfpack Discoveries is practically 80% honor students. So, they're very strong with research and promote even studying abroad with research. So, they do a great job with that.
And then for Mark, as like an honors dad, how would you see that impact in like your son's life, for example?
Well, like I said, I'm really happy that they've been challenged. Like Adriel's brother, coming out of high school, wasn't a great student. He was a good student, but he wasn't straight A's by any means. And I remember having this conversation with him in high school. I'm like, hey, dude, you should apply to this honors college thing. At the time, it was the honors program, hadn't yet transitioned to the college. He goes, well, I'm not smart enough, and my grades aren't good enough. I'm like, no, just go for it, right? Go apply. And he wrote an interesting application. My wife, Adriel and Matthew's mom's family is from a different country, the Dominican Republic. She grew up speaking Spanish as her first language. We have a very interesting family. My family background is from Europe, and my wife's family background is from there. And so, kind of dealing with a couple of cultures and putting that all together, I think is cool. But I think from an honors perspective, like Adriel said, I think the professors are open to challenging the students, and they ask a lot of them. And the flip side of that is they trust them to be smart about things and to have debate. And I think that's I just look at Adriel, the difference from when he was a freshman with remote classes, basically locked in his dorm here, and compared to sophomore year where he got to interact with human beings, to this year where he's the president of the student council. He's just taken on so much more stuff than, he's super busy, but, he gets a lot done. And I'm really impressed with, his maturity. And, the other students I've met, very curious. I met one student a couple months ago who's like, yeah, my family comes from, Mexico, and, I have this idea, I want to start a biotech company. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So I think, students shouldn't be afraid of trying stuff And I think honors kind of gives them that, belief and like believe in yourself and just go for it and try something. So I think it's a really good and supportive framework for students.
Yeah, freshman year still amazes me that it even happened. It really feels like a fever dream. It felt like a time warp for some, because there was really nothing that happened freshman year. It's just all online and no events on campus. So I honestly feel like a sophomore in college to some extent. But to touch on what my dad was saying, in high school I wasn't a very good student either. I was getting C's regularly, and cumulative, I think my GPA was 3.4 coming out of high school. But to add on to that, my senior year, the last 2 semesters, I got a 4.4 and a 4.2. So when you weigh that to the rest of my high school, I really didn't do very great. And also I'd get kicked out of a lot of classes because I'd like to cause disruptions. And honestly, honors in high school versus honors at university is completely different.
Wait, 4.4, that's pretty good. I mean, why was that a bad grade? I mean, 4.4.
No, I got
school.
Cumulative 3.4.
Right, but you said the last 2 semesters. You
Yeah,
got 4.2.
because I took most of my classes were either honors or AP, and I got A's in those. Those are just my last semester.
But I think the point is, especially for males, right? The construct that you're supposed to sit in a chair all day long, shut up, and listen to what the teacher tells you is kind of what you're taught in middle school and high school. And most people that doesn't work, but being a man and seeing kind of the way my sons went through high school, like that doesn't work for most men or young men. They need experiential stuff. They need they need to be active. And I think what you said, Adriel, about ending up with a 4.2 and a 4.4 senior year during COVID was that you were like interested. And
well, maybe COVID made it a little bit easier. At least my second semester did. But first semester it was in person. But
well, I mean, the point is that Adriel was saying that, his grades weren't great in school. Then all of a sudden he got interested and he rose to the occasion. That's kind of my point. So if you're out there as a student in high school thinking about, I'm not smart enough, no, you haven't been challenged enough. That's the problem. You probably haven't had someone in your life who, can tell you, that you can go do it.
well, I'd say my senior year, my teachers were a lot more interesting than all my other teachers the past couple of years. And that definitely was night and day. And also I took a lot more AP and honors classes than I had ever taken. So that helped out a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a correlation between interest and achievement, right? If you're interested in what you're doing, there's that famous book called Flow. You probably heard of like the flow state. And so there's a curve in the book that basically is like, let's say you're playing tennis and you're not very good. It's not really fun. And then you play a little more and you get better. And then you play with someone who's a little better than you and they push you and you continue to progress up this curve. And it's that state of when you're kind of pushing beyond your bounds or, getting over your skis, so to speak, that you're like, wow, this is challenging, but it's fun, right? And that kind of area is kind of the excitement area. And that's what I find as an entrepreneur. That's what really excites me. I'm like, wow, I see this opportunity. Let me research it. Wow, this is cool. And as you're building and kind of as you're building, you're always kind of looking over the edge of the cliff like, I don't really know what's there. But as you get better at something, that the edge gets, kind of moved out a little bit. So I think that experience is what's great about the Honors College, right? You take kids who had never really been challenged, and it's like, hey, you can do this. Go try something. Go get out of your comfort zone. And, like in Adriel's case, I mean, he's like, Dean's List and crushing it, in the Honors College while he's the president of the student council, while he's got a social life, he's in a fraternity, and like he's a busy kid, but he's doing well. And the busier you are, you know that saying, the busier you are, the more time you have. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and to touch on that, I mean, honors at university is completely different at honors in high school. Honors in high school, I feel like it's, your parents nagging at you to take a harder class, to get into a better university, or do community service work, and all the parents are pressing their kids to do this to get in a better university or get scholarships or all that. And then once you come to university, you're an adult, it's all on you whether you want to do honors or not. And a lot of times, high school honors really ruins it for students. For me, when I first heard about the honors college, I'm like, why the hell would I want to take more honors in college, But it's not that you're taking harder classes. It's you just yourself wants to enhance your academic experience, get more support, take smaller classes, enjoy different learning style. And I had one of my buddies in my fraternity who was in the honors college earlier this semester. He accidentally got put into an honors section, I think of his psych class, and he texts me. He's like, Adriel, this class is amazing. I need to join the honors college, because it's just, if he wasn't in that class, he'd be in a 200-person class with a boring professor lecturing every day. And in his honors class, the professor was really engaging, would always discuss the topics with them, and it was a lot smaller and a closer class. So that's what students really enjoy about the honors college.
And by the way, part of the reason that Adriel was excited about applying to the honors college was when he found out that he got priority registration and then wouldn't have class on Friday. So I think that was a big driver.
Yeah, and a balance. When I was applying to university, it came down between here or UC, and it was either I go to UC, hopefully graduate in 4 years, pay a lot more, or come here. Will definitely graduate in 4 years. It's a lot more affordable, and I could also be in the honors college. And just weighing those two, I think it was a pretty easy choice.
I have a question. You said about your GPA. You have some tips for younger students, like who's starting now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at least in the college business, I'm not really sure how it is in other colleges, because they could be more difficult. But college business, enjoy the first 2 years as much as possible. Explore everything you can, join clubs, do internships, do leadership opportunities. Just expose yourself to as much as you can, because junior year definitely gets a bit harder and you got to work more. But, I mean, all 4 years you should be doing that. And, just enjoy it while you're here and learn. You came to university to learn, and what you put in is what you get out, really. So, really, just learn as much as you can and expose yourself to as much as you can, and you'll get the most out of your college experience, and you'll definitely be satisfied.
Yeah, one thing I think that made a big difference with, Adriel's older brother when he came here was he did the Nevada-bound tour thing. And so they have a program here where when you're looking, you come, you take a tour, you get to interact with, whatever college you're interested in getting into. And, his older brother said yes to another university originally. And then he said, Dad, I don't know if I made the right choice, because I think it was the dean of students at the time on the tour was like, think about where you feel like you belong. And he was like, the people at UNR just felt like really, welcoming and open. And, I'm about to say yes to this, state school in California, and I think I made a mistake. And I'm like, well, dude, call up UNR, see if you can, undo your rejection. And so that's what he did. And he came here and was like super happy and, graduated with honors college, all that sort of thing. And I think another thing that UNR does really well to help incoming students, besides this Nevada-bound thing, I think, a lot of schools, especially after COVID, they're like, oh yeah, look at our video, or look at the 3D map of the campus, and like you can't really get a feel for it. I think Nevada does a good job, with that program to come spend a day here and check it out. But they have this other thing that when the freshmen come in, they have that program called Nevada Fit, which is now mandatory, and kids basically get in like a boot camp setting. Adriel can talk more about that because he's a mentor to Nevada Fit. But I remember Matthew, his older brother, came out of that, and he goes, they told me that this is going to be the maximum pressure I'm going to face while in college, and it wasn't that bad. Like, I got this. So he came out of Nevada Fit before he even started as a freshman feeling confident that he could do it. And I remember being in the snooty little liberal arts school, I was feeling like the dumbest guy in the room. I'm like, oh my God, can I get through this? And all these, I wasn't really confident. So I think UNR does a good job of helping kids kind of find their confidence.
And Nevada Fit's great, except my freshman year didn't get to do it, unfortunately, like everything else. But ever since then, I've been a Nevada Fit mentor, and I've really enjoyed it, just being a mentor. I know for the students it could be kind of rough, but I like just welcoming new students to your university, and I've done a lot of different things as my time being a student here, so I know I give them great, helpful information and tips for the transition from high school to college, because that's probably one of the most difficult things is really time management and taking care of yourself. And if you don't have that, you're not going to do well in college. So I definitely can give them great advice on that. And it is very difficult for students because there's jam-packed every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. just doing work. But after that, everything else feels like a breeze, at least through your first year. So I really enjoy the program, and I'm doing it this upcoming fall semester. I'm going to be a lead mentor this year. So
yeah, so incoming students, watch out for Adriel. You might meet him if you're.
What do you mean
incoming.
watch out? What are you going to watch out for?
I mean, watch he's there to help. That's what I mean.
And I know this last fall semester was my first semester here at the university, and again, like that tipping point for me in wanting to come here was like, oh, I did the Nevada Bound tour, and I was the only one there for the college tour from my college, so it felt like I really mattered, which was really important to me when like deciding to come up here from Vegas originally, because and then doing Nevada Fit, I felt like really did that whole thing where it's like it's intensive, maybe a little over the top, but with a purpose, to really like have students engage in the program and see like, oh, this is what college is, and like get them a real feel of how the university is, especially if it's like that, just like 1 week, I think, of just like doing what they tell you to do. I feel like it's just really important to get that feel of like the university life, especially for like new students, especially since my year, it was like a lot of COVID too. So it was like, oh, coming in, it was like no school, 1 year of senior year, and then into college, which was really surreal, which really didn't feel like, it just felt awkward for me personally, but I understand where that comes from too. And especially within the Honors College, one of our mottos is life's a journey and make it meaningful. And I really feel like that's important for like at least every student too, where everyone has a unique experience here at the university, and like if you put yourself out there and make it for yourself, then I feel like the experience you can have is like truly yours to like have, and especially like helping you for like future like endeavors past college. So for Mark, I don't know how we are on time, but I want to ask like, so taking that motto in mind, like what in your background did you do throughout your like journey to get to where you are now? Like what did you do, and like how do you think that impacted like you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of took the life as a journey thing kind of to the extreme. I did a lot of kind of weird journey things, like, you know, when I was in high school. I went on a bicycle trip one summer from New York City to Seattle, and so it was me and like 7 other kids, you know, and like 2 leaders, and we left New York City with no itinerary, and we had these 2 quote unquote adults, 19 and 21, who were our leaders, and these guys were like kind of hippie dudes, and they'd stop and smoke pot, and here we are, these like 15, 16-year-old kids from New York, like riding bicycles, like not knowing what the hell we're doing, and that was kind of crazy. And one kid like dropped out because his knees gave out. Another kid got in a near fatal accident and got shipped home for a month, and then came back at the very end, just as we were getting to the Pacific Ocean. But I mean, like, what does that have to do with anything? I think for me, it was like, okay, I learned real fast about self-reliance, about, you know, either like no one knew me, people weren't judging me that, you know, the nicknames I was called in school or whatever. Like, I was there, and people reacted to me the way I reacted, the way I did things. And so, you know, I quickly got that, hey, if you are out there, if you're like impeccable with your word, if you're cool, you know, that's all you can do. And if someone likes you, great. And if they don't like you, you know, whatever. But it's literally, you know, we were charting our own journey, you know, all summer, riding across the country. And, you know, we slept in barns. We were sleeping in a park one day and one night in Iowa. And someone came out like late at night and said, "You guys got to come into our basement." We're like, well, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "There's a tornado coming through." We're like, "Oh shit, the tornado!" Like, I've never seen a tornado before. So like, we literally spent the night in this basement. So, you know, those sorts of things. I would say, you know, really look for experiences, you know, that take you out of your comfort zone. You know, try different things. But for me, so then I went to this liberal arts school where, you know, I studied government and creative writing that has no real correlation, you know, to business. But then I did an internship in Washington, D.C. for a semester, working in a senator's office and then at the State Department. And that was cool. I'm like, the only way I'd come back to Washington is if I were like the secretary of something, because like being a bureaucrat sucks. Like, this isn't for me. So I knew that I didn't want to do government things. And then after college, I went to Europe for a summer because I wanted to travel, and I got a summer job driving a forklift in a brewery. So there's a picture of me like on a forklift with these huge pallets of Coca-Cola cans and stuff. And, you know, that was kind of random. But, you know, it's like, hey, a lot of people have jobs where they, you know, go to a factory and punch in at 7 in the morning. And like, I'd never been exposed to that, you know, growing up in a ritzy town, you know, outside of New York City. I'm like, wow, you know, it gave me a lot of respect for, you know, people who, you know, do hard jobs, do difficult things. And then I got an idea when I was in Sweden. I'm like, hey, man, it'd be cool to start a new company, because I'm living in this student dorm, and all these students are telling me about when they were in America, they missed this, they missed that. And what kept coming up is they missed chocolate chip cookies. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you can't get chocolate chip cookies in Sweden. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, you can't buy the ingredients, the chocolate's not right, the sugar's not right. Like, that can't be true, you know. So I went and like did some research and looked around. Sure enough, they were right. And I'm like, okay. So I asked my mom to send me some ingredients, and I made chocolate chip cookies in the dorm, and people were like, oh man, these are amazing. And I'm like, you know, I have the playbook from the United States. You know, I hate chocolate chip cookies, said no one ever, right? How could this not work here? So like, I went down to the main park in Stockholm where I was living, and like handed out some cookies and asked people like 4 questions. And then I'm like, I'm going to start this cookie business, but I had to get a job, so I was like a waiter in a bar. And one night I'm driving home, and there's another American guy on the bus, and we're the only two people on the bus. And so we start talking, and he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, it's a long story. He goes, no, tell me. I'm like, well, I'm going to start this chain of chocolate chip cookie stores. And he goes, really? I'm like, yeah. He goes, why? And he hands me his card, and he's the Stockholm correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. And he's like, well, write something up and, bring it to my office. I'm like, okay. But I didn't have a computer because, I was a kid working in a bar, and, back then, computers were expensive. So I was at the university, and I had friends who'd go to the computer lab, so I'd sneak in behind them and get into the computer lab and, wrote my business plan, and people were looking at me. I thought, everyone's looking at me because, who is this guy? So I'd be sneaking into the computer lab for weeks at a time to use the computer to write, the business plan. And I used that business plan. I got a bank to give me a loan, amazingly. And I wrote this overview of what the company was. I slid it under the guy's door. And the week later, my dad calls me up, and he's in New York. He goes, hey, Mark, you're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I'm like, what? And, on the Wall Street Journal, there's, the column that has, these little one-paragraph kind of news things. And I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, that can't be true. So I go down to the Central Station. Again, this is a long time ago, before the internet. So this, you couldn't just look it up online. I go down the train station, and sure enough, there's this little blurb that says Swedish Sweet Tooth. American entrepreneur Mark Friedler is going to open the first chain of cookie stores in Sweden. And so I said to the guy at the newsstand, I'm like, hey, if I'm on the front page of this paper, will you give me all the copies you have? And he looks at me. I'm like this 22-year-old kid. He's like, yeah, right. So I show him my ID, point to my name on the paper. He hands me 6 copies of the paper. And so I used that story, and I went to the biggest shopping mall in Stockholm. I'm like, look, this is on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. This is going to be big. You're either on the bus or you're not on the bus. I need to open a store in your mall. And they amazingly said yes, right? I'm a 22-year-old kid, no business experience. I don't know anything about anything. And now the biggest mall in Stockholm just gave me a slot to open a cookie store. So then I had to figure out how to actually go do it. So those sorts of things I think are great because you're dropped in the deep end and you either sink or swim. If you take an infant, and drop them in a pool, they'll automatically close their eyes, hold their breath, and they won't drown. That's their instinct. So I think we all have that instinct, to do that. It's just we don't really push ourselves enough, to go try things. So to answer your question, I think there are 2 ways of looking at it. Being super focused and being like, hey, I want to be the best finance person I can be and get all the training you can and go get the internships and go do it. That's great if you're blessed to know that you want to be a finance person or a doctor or an engineer or a ballerina or whatever. I mean, I kind of wish I had that kind of clarity. But like Adriel says, the good news and the bad news is that I'm interested in lots of different things. So, nowadays people call that ADD. I call that being interesting. Very few people are one-dimensional, right? There's no reason why you can't be a great artist and a great finance person, or be, an amazing athlete and, a super good biologist, right? Those things are not mutually exclusive. So, I think the willingness to try things and be uncomfortable with not having all the answers, I think that's cool. And I think the Honors College kind of arms students with kind of that sort of, confidence to go try stuff. So yeah, I think there are very few points in life where you're going to be certain. And like I tell these stories and I look back and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like I'm 21 years old and I flew to Sweden and like I didn't know anyone. Like it was insane. and like I couldn't get online. There was no internet. So, but it all worked out. So, I think most of the time it works out. You just have to have, the willingness to get off your butt and go do stuff.
I have a question for Adriel. What's next?
What's next? I mean, finishing school, of course, and then after that, what it's looking like is getting a job in the finance industry. But I mean, I really don't know. It's hard to fixate on one thing when both my parents have just been all over the place when they were young and they had some interesting lives. I mean, I really want to do the same. So, I mean, I don't have a set plan on what I want to do. I mean, I'm used to just entering the unknown, and I'm comfortable with it, and that's really what I want to keep doing. I've been thinking of even possibly getting my master's, because that's only another year of school. Or I really want to do some study abroad too while I'm still here. So, I mean, just time will tell what's gonna happen. And I really the stories my dad tells me are so interesting to me, because his time is completely different than the time we all grew up in. Like how'd you even get a loan when you're that, like, how's that even possible?
Yeah.
And
Well, it wasn't from SVB, I'll tell you that. But it's funny. It was from SEB, Scandinavian Bank. So it's sounds close. But yeah, I went in. I showed him a plan. I'm like, hey, I'm going to start the store. Like, the thing about a retail business or a business that has money coming in is that you can forecast that. Your forecast may not be right, but at the end of the day, every day, you're going to have money in the cash register, receipts. So I think banks understand that, right? Banks don't understand, like, hey, man, I'm going to do a startup, and we're going to build something in the metaverse, and we're going to sell virtual land, and maybe we'll get money, right? That, like, a lot of that's kind of, not really realistic, or it's not forecastable. But, I'm doing a thing now with a couple of companies, and I mentor several startups. And one of the things I especially these last couple of weeks with the financial meltdown, which I'm afraid is kind of just the beginning. I think we're going to be in for some bad stuff going on, and a lot of that has to do with wishful thinking and irresponsibility and people just being idiots. And I talk to founders all the time, like, hey, dude, I need to go raise some money and blah, blah, blah. And, can you help me raise some money? I'm like, yeah, I can help you raise money in 5 minutes. He goes, really? I'm like, yeah, go sell more stuff. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, get off your ass, call up 10 prospects for your product or service, and tell them that, you're going to sell, this is the price. Oh, and by the way, you have a special program for early adopters. You're going to give them 50% off, but they need to give you a testimonial back. And you only have 5 slots, and 3 of the 5 are taken. You're going to take one of the 2 slots. So, I mean, you don't be a jerk, but be confident and come in and be like, my job here is to help you in your business, and you're going to pay me money for that. People are like, oh, sales, that's dirty. And no, it's not. Like, everything is sales. You're either selling or you're being sold. Everything, if I'm convincing you to go do something, and then you go out and, buy this cool brand, or, go buy a sandwich or something like that, like, that's sales. And that's part of business. And I hear this all the time. Oh, I'm a technical founder. I don't know how to sell. Well, then friggin' learn how to sell. I'll teach you how to sell. It's not that hard, but just communicate really clearly, have an offer that provides value to somebody on the other side, and show that you're credible and you're going to be there, and most people will be okay. Yeah, let's do it. And on top of that, people like doing business with people they like. You know, like I tell my sons all the time, you know, the 3 rules to success, like show up, go beyond, above and beyond, and don't be an asshole, right? Like those 3 things, if you do those 3 things, you're in the top 5% of everybody. And it's really not that hard. Just most people are lazy and don't want to do it, or won't, you know, fall down once and, oh, it's too hard, and they don't get back up.
Yeah, and one thing that my dad's taught me very well is not giving a shit. If anyone knows how to do it well, it's this guy. He'll just pick up calls in the library and talk really loudly. Or, we were in Costco the other day. He just hops on a FaceTime call. He's got the phone up and everything. I got total secondhand embarrassment, but he doesn't give a shit. But I just think not caring what people think about you around you is really powerful. And just, you'll have your friends, you'll have the people that care about you for as long as you do you. People will love you for that. And if you always are thinking about what other people think about you, then you're just self-inflicting problems on yourself and worrying about things that don't even matter to begin with. So, really, what was that book you told me about? Was it The Art of Not Giving a Shit?
Yeah, it's not shit. It's another word, starts with an F. But yeah, that's a great title. I mean, it's, the whatever. But yeah, I think the other thing too is we're living in a tough time. I mean, yeah, a lot of kids in school now have this terrible COVID hangover, right? I mean, it damaged a lot of people, and it created a lot of dependency. It created a lot of narratives, polarization, all that sort of thing, which, are bad. And I think a big, multiplier of badness is social media, right? I'm like, oh, luckily my kids don't spend much time on it. Then I look over and this guy's on Snap all the time.
I looked at the hours on your phone. You spend more time on Instagram than I do. You have like 100 times more posts on Instagram than I do. So don't tell me that I'm using social media more. Come on now.
But no.
I'm happy that you said that because I love his LinkedIn. My second question for you is that, so are you planning to do amazing LinkedIn as your father or close to that?
Oh yeah, of course.
It's a plan about it?
Yeah, I'm starting up slow. I'm new to the LinkedIn, only been in it for a couple of years. But I have a few posts. I got nicely set up. If anyone wants to connect with me, just Adriel Friedler on LinkedIn. Feel free.
The self-plug.
And that's the other thing, too, is like, don't let anyone tell you you're not an expert. Like, you may be an expert in something that not that many people know about. Or I'll give you an example. So a guy I know, I've been doing a lot in the crypto world, and he's like, hey, Mark, I was really, interested because I knew you when you worked at Oracle, and we both worked at Oracle together. And the guy was like, oh, yeah, I saw you doing all this crypto stuff, and that's really interesting. And so I got interested in it. And then he got interested in Web3. So he was like collecting NFTs, and he kind of became an expert, in NFTs. And he had a conversation with this video game company, and they, from a high level, kind of knew about it, but they had never really gotten their hands dirty. And he had gotten his hands dirty with different brands and was like collecting NFTs of different brands. And so he said to them, hey, I'm doing this and this and this. And he ended up getting a job at this company because he was doing it. And he'd been there a few months, and turned out the CEO wanted to meet with him because no one in the company, again, they're talking about it, but no one really got their hands dirty. And he said to me, he goes, I'm having a little bit of imposter syndrome here. I don't really know that much, but I've been playing with it for like 6 months, 8 months. But he's the most experienced person in that company, and he's only been doing it for 6 months. So my point is, like, whatever you're doing, you can really become an expert. And I think what LinkedIn is really good for is kind of highlighting that. And I think the formula for LinkedIn is to be a net giver. I do these little videos. I try and make them, between 30 seconds and a minute and a half. I'm like, hey, I have 2 or 3 points for you on this or this topic. And, I was just at an event a few weeks ago, and someone came up to me and she was like, "Oh, hey, I recognize you from LinkedIn." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I think that's good. And the other thing too is, and no matter what you're doing, is, consistency, right? Like, and you don't have to be an expert in just one thing. You could be an expert in, like, collecting, native art from, the Amazon, and you could be an expert in, physics, you know what I mean? So the good thing about the only social media I really endorse, I like LinkedIn because it's aimed at a business thing. I think Instagram is fun, but it's a waste of time. And TikTok is the ultimate waste of time. I think that's really corrosive. I think it's dangerous. Snap, I don't have an opinion. I mean, these guys, they use it for whatever they use it for.
I don't use Snapchat. But
Facebook is great on your birthday because all these people you don't really give a what about, like, say happy birthday. I'm like, well, and that's the great thing, because whenever you get the notification of people's birthdays on Facebook, because Facebook doesn't allow you to see all your friends, but every birthday you come up, I just unfriend people. Because it's like I've friended all these people over the years. I'm like, I haven't spoken to that person in years. I don't want them lurking on my stuff. So I barely post on Facebook now.
I still don't get Facebook. I think it sucks. First of all,
It's
you
a
have a
generational
separate app to message people. I have it, but just for Marketplace, because they got a great Marketplace. But besides that, the posts are lame. It updates you every time someone changes their profile picture. Like, I don't care. Like, who cares about their profile picture being changed? Yeah. But I don't get why you guys use it so much, especially after how much you don't like Instagram.
Yeah.
So I have one final question for the both of you, and that is, really importantly, like, what's the legacy you guys would like to leave behind for yourselves? Like, generally, in that sense of, like, and that question was from, I don't know who.
Givona. She's an honors student and ambassador.
Yeah, so she's an honors student and ambassador here at the university, and she asked, like, what legacy would you guys like to leave behind for yourselves?
Well, I mean, legacy, I don't like that question. It kind of infers that, after you're dead, what do you want people to think about? So hopefully I won't be dead anytime soon. But I think I'd, as an entrepreneur, my kind of cultural bias has always been, like, think different and challenge, the conventional wisdom. And I'm very, very concerned about the state of higher education, not so much here, but, like, California is a total train wreck. I mean, I don't know if you saw what happened last week. There was a federal judge that went to speak at Stanford Law School. And these are law students. And law students were, like, wanting to ban him from speaking because, they didn't agree, with some of his points. And just yesterday, in fact, University of California, Davis, there was a conservative author, this guy Charlie Kirk, who was speaking at UC Davis, and people in masks and came and smashed windows and doors and wouldn't let people in. I mean, that is happening right now in universities, and that intolerance cannot be accepted, and that's what really concerns me. So, like, at this Stanford Law, one of the most prestigious schools in the country, you have people who are basically not allowing other people to express themselves. And these are people who are going to become judges, who are going to be, involved in, the important part of enforcing the law. And the great part about America and American law is it's for everyone, right? It's not like in India where you have a caste system or this or that. And that is really much at risk right now. So I think what I really want to stand for is I want people to be able to, be their true authentic self, express their thoughts, be able to have open conversations about ideas that maybe not everyone agrees with, but be able to have that marketplace of ideas. And that's how you learn. You can't say, oh, we can't say this because, like example, the whole COVID lab leak, right? 3 years ago, you're like, oh my God, we can't say it was a lab leak. And now all of a sudden the federal government's like, yep, looks like a lab leak, right? But people literally got fired and canceled and, because they dared raise an opinion. Well, you can have an opinion and it can be totally proven not to be true, but doesn't mean you can't have an opinion. Doesn't mean that's what education is about. Like you come to me with a crazy idea and I come to you with a crazy idea, and then through logic we try and convince each other of that idea, and hopefully the marketplace rewards the better idea instead of saying we can't say this or we can't think like that. So I'm hoping that doesn't come to UNR. It's definitely come to California. California's going to pay the price of that. I'm afraid, and higher education right now is, looking very intolerant. So I think successful people are going to be open-minded and are not going to accept intolerance from any angle, regardless where it comes from. So I'd say go out, be your best person. And yes, life is a journey, but a journey without a destination means you're just wandering in the desert. Don't just wander around. The journey is a hell of a lot better if you have a destination and you want to go there and you want to be successful or you want this and you're working towards that. You may change that, but a journey with no destination is kind of, flailing around.
Yeah, I definitely want to be my best self. Am I there yet? Definitely not, but I'm working towards that.
You're a pretty good dude.
Yeah, well, biased opinion from you because you're my dad, but yeah, I'm working towards that, and also something I really want to do is always make an impact on the community around me. If I'm not, I'm big into leadership, and if I'm not working towards bettering what's around me and affecting other people in positive ways, then I don't really see a purpose in what I'm doing. And I think my version of success is just achievement. If I'm not constantly challenging myself and achieving new goals of mine, then I don't feel successful. So, yeah, that's really the legacy I want to leave. Hopefully I don't die soon, but that's the legacy per se.
All right, well, I want to thank Mark and Adriel for joining us today here at the university.
Go Pack!